The path led him through a wood, and there he saw a father raven and mother raven standing by their nest and throwing their young ones out. "Off with you, young gallows birds!" cried they. "We cannot stuff you any more. You are big enough to fend for yourselves." The poor young ravens lay on the ground, fluttering and beating the air with their pinions and crying, "We are poor helpless things. We cannot fend for ourselves. We cannot even fly. We can only die of hunger." Then the kind young man dismounted, killed his horse with his dagger, and left it to the young ravens for food. They came hopping up, feasted away at it, and cried, "We will remember and reward thee." So now he had to use his own legs, and when he had gone a long way, he came to a great town. There was much noise and thronging in the streets, and there came a man on a horse who proclaimed that the king's daughter seeks a husband, but he who wishes to marry her must perform a difficult task, and if he cannot carry it through successfully, he must lose his life. Many had already tried, but had lost their lives in vain. The young man, when he saw the king's daughter, was so dazzled by her great beauty that he forgot all danger, went to the king, and offered himself as a wooer. Then he was led to the seaside, and a gold ring was thrown into the water before his eyes. Then the king told him that he must fetch the ring up again from the bottom of the sea, saying, "If you come back without it, you shall be put under the waves again and again until you are drowned." Everyone pitied the handsome young man, but they went and left him alone by the sea. As he was standing on the shore and thinking of what he should do, there came 3 fishes swimming by, none other than those he had set free. The middle one had a mussel in his mouth, and he laid it on the strand at the young man's feet, and when he took it up and opened it, there was the gold ring inside. Full of joy, he carried it to the king and expected the promised reward, but the king's daughter, proud of her high birth, despised him and set him another task to perform. She went out into the garden and strewed about over the grass 10 sacks full of millet seed. "By the time the sun rises in the morning, you must have picked up all these," she said, "and not a grain must be wanting." The young man sat down in the garden and considered how it was possible to do this task, but he could contrive nothing, and stayed there feeling very sorrowful and expecting to be led to death at break of day. But when the first beams of the sun fell on the garden, he saw then that the 10 sacks were all filled, standing one by the other, and not even a grain was missing. The ant king had arrived in the night with his thousands of ants, and the grateful creatures had picked up all the millet seed and filled the sacks with great industry. The king's daughter came herself into the garden and saw with astonishment that the young man had performed all that had been given him to do, but she could not let her proud heart melt, and said, "Although he has completed the 2 tasks, he shall not be my bridegroom unless he brings me an apple from the tree of life." The young man did not know where the tree of life was to be found, but he set out and went on and on as long as his legs could carry him, but he had no hope of finding it. When he had gone through 3 kingdoms, he came one evening to a wood, and seated himself under a tree to go to sleep. But he heard a rustling in the boughs, and a golden apple fell into his hand. Immediately 3 ravens flew towards him, perched on his knee, and said, "We are the 3 young ravens that you delivered from starving. When we grew big and heard you were seeking the golden apple, we flew over the sea to the end of the earth, where the tree of life stands, and we fetched the apple." Full of joy, the young man set off on his way home, and brought the golden apple to the king's beautiful daughter, who was without any further excuse. So they divided the apple of life and ate it together, and their hearts were filled with love, and they lived in undisturbed happiness to a great age. Yeah, this guy was really kind, huh? Feeding the ravens. What about the horse, though? What about the horse?